So guys, let's start with the serverless computing in the cloud. In this video, we will talk about how we can use it in the production, and also we will go through all the real-time examples with the different cloud service provider which is available in the market. Now let's understand what exactly the serverless computing is. It's a cloud computing model in which the cloud provider manages the underlying infrastructure and automatically allocates and manage the resources whenever we need for our application. If we will talk about in detail, the cloud provider takes care of everything related to the server infrastructure, operating system, runtime environment, and scaling of infrastructure if that is needed for our application. So now our developers can focus on writing code and deploying application. Now let's talk about the myths what we are having about the serverless computing. As you know, the term serverless can be misleading, right? As there are still servers involved to run our application. However, the key difference is that the developer does not need to manage the servers, and they just only pay for the resources what they are using for their application rather than having to pay for a fixed set of resources all the time. We just need to focus on our code and we just need to pay when we need to run that code. Now let's talk about the advantage of serverless computing in the cloud. So serverless computing has several advantages. Like we can reduce our operational cost, we can launch our application faster in the market, and we can have the better stability. So additionally, if we'll talk about it, allow developer to focus on writing code rather than managing the server side infrastructure where we spend our lots of time, right? So now let's talk about how we can use the serverless computing in the cloud, which is step by step. Let's talk about the first step, that is choose a cloud provider. So there are several cloud providers available in the market that offer serverless cloud computing, right? So including AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCP, and OCI, we are having multiple cloud provider which provide this serverless computing. So first we need to choose the correct cloud provider. Next thing, we need to select the service. Means each cloud provider offer different serverless computing services. For example, if we will talk about AWS, it offers AWS Lambda. If we will talk about Azure, it offers Azure Function. Let's talk about GCP. It offers Cloud Function with the name Cloud Function. And if we'll talk about OCI, it provide this service with the name Oracle Function. So we need to choose the service that's meet our needs. In the next step, we need to create an account. So we need to create an account with the cloud provider where we need to use this service. After creating our account, next step is we need to create the function. So we can create this function in the console. We can create a function by selecting the appropriate service and providing the required information like we need for function name, programming language that we want to use, and the code which we want to execute. So after creating the function, now we need to configure the trigger. That means then we need to provide the details when we want to execute this function. So we can provide this after configuring the trigger where we can define like HTTP request, or we can execute this code with the database updates or any file uploads. So it's all depend situation and condition to condition it will vary for our trigger. So we need to focus when we want to trigger this function, that detail we can need to provide in the trigger configuration. After this, we configure the trigger. Now we need to test this function. So how we can do it? We can test this function either through the console or through the API. In the last step, we need to monitor the function. That means we can monitor the function's performance and usage using the cloud providers monitoring tools. Now we will talk about serverless computing services in the cloud with different cloud providers. So first we are having AWS Lambda. So it's a serverless computing services which is provided by Amazon Web Services, and it allows developers to run code without provisioning or managing any server. So AWS Lambda supports several programming languages like Java, Python, Node.js, or C Sharp. Now you can pause your screen and go through the example which is I mentioned for AWS Lambda that will help you to understand better about the AWS Lambda functionality. Now let's talk about Azure Function, which is a serverless computing service which is provided by Microsoft Azure, which allow developers to run code in response to any event or the triggers. So these triggers can be anything like HTTP request or any change in the data in the Azure Cosmos DB. Also, Azure Function supports several programming languages such as C Sharp, Java, JavaScript, and Python. Now again, you can pause your screen to go through the real-time example for Azure function. After that, we will go through the next service in the list. Next service from the list we are having from Google Cloud. The name of the service is Cloud Function, which is serverless computing service provided by Google Cloud Platform, and it allow developer to run code in response to the events and triggers like we are having in Azure. And these triggers can be anything like changes in the data in Google Cloud Storage or incoming HTTP request. So Google Cloud Function supports several programming languages such as Node.js, Python, and Code. Now you can go through this example, which is for Google Cloud Function to process incoming customer reviews from multiple sources. These sources can be anything like social media and reviews website. Okay. Now in the last, we are having Oracle Function, which is a serverless computing service provided by OCI, and it allows developer to run code in the response to any event or the trigger. And here we can configure these triggers in the form of HTTP request or messages in OCI streaming services. And Oracle Function supports programming language like Java, Node.js, and Python. And once you are understand this thing, now we will go through the example for Oracle function where we need to talk about process incoming orders from customer. Now it's time to summarize the serverless computing service. As we discussed, there are lots of benefits of using serverless computing because it can help us to save operational cost, launching our application faster in the market, and also help for better scalability. So by selecting the appropriate serverless computing from provide cloud provider what we are having in the market, we can use it so developer can easily create the function and deploy it in the production, and also it can integrate this service with other cloud provider. So I hope you find this video helpful in terms of understanding serverless computing. See you in next video for more learning resources.